It's summer, cherries are in season. It's time to make one of my favorite desserts. Let's go. Today we are making a cherry pie by popular demand. You're going to need cherries, we're going to need some sugar, a lemon, some cornstarch, 300 grams of flour, some salt, and that's it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is make the pie dough because this has to set in the fridge for 30 minutes to an hour, ideally an hour. So you can work with it properly. So let's get started. You're going to measure out 300 grams of flour. We're going to add in a quarter teaspoon of salt and a quarter cup of white granulated sugar. Just take a whisk, gently stir that, and we want to just distribute all the sugar and salt with the flour. Next, we're going to add some very cold butter. Now, most packaged butter will have, thankfully, will have cups marked off. We want a full cup of butter, which is about 220 grams, to distribute into the flour. So I'm just going to third. Going to make a mark there. What we want to do is just cut the butter into little cubes so it's easier to work with. Of course, very hard to keep butter very, very cold while you're setting up for filming when it's Toronto summer and it is wildly hot. So if you get into that stage, don't worry. You can just pick the butter apart, put it in the freezer, cool it down a bit. You do want it as cold as you can get it to work with it in the flour. Okay. Our butter is now hard again. Man, in this heat, it really does just soften up so fast. So let's get this in here fast. And what we're just going to do is start breaking this up with our fingers. You can use one of those pastry cutters, but do it with your hands is fine. You may have to reset every once in a while in the fridge or freezer, but if you work fast, if you've got a low body temp, unlike me, you'll get this done quick. It's not a big deal. You're going to break this down, all the butter with the flour. Using your hands, you're going to break this down until all the little chunks of butter resemble sort of, you want to try to get them as close to pea size as possible, granular if you can a little bit. You want some bigger chunks, some smaller chunks. Just keep going. Sometimes I also just use one of these sort of curved bench knives, because your hands do get hot and it will start to warm the butter up. And this is a decent way to get this butter broken down without raising the temperature on it too much. Okay, so that's sort of what we're looking for. All that butter sort of crumbled into the flour. You've got some bigger chunks, a lot of granular stuff. Now we're ready to add 5 tablespoons of ice water. And we're just going to start to slowly add this in. I add about half of it in first and start to work it into the dough. It doesn't have to be the exact 5 tablespoons. It could be a bit more. It can be a bit less. This is coming together pretty quickly. Still use all of it. I sort of lean more to the wetter side. I've overshot the mark a few times, and it's pretty easy to fix. You just add in a couple handfuls or maybe a half handful of flour, and you get back to the right consistency. Okay, so you can see, and you just want it to clump like this. Like when you grab it, squeeze it, sort of stays in a clump like that. Let's just knock this out onto the cutting board. Out of the way. Sprinkling of flour helps. We just want to work the dough for a few minutes. You want to kind of flatten it out and then fold it over, and it helps create those layers with the butter and flour that end up looking and tasting really flaky. A few more times, that should be it. Okay, that's the consistency we want. Now, this is too soft like this, and it's too warm. So that's why we wrap it and put it in the fridge for half an hour to an hour, preferably the latter. So you can do it. You can just wrap the entire thing. It's probably smarter to just cut it in half. Make 2 balls. Then it's a little more easier when it's ice cold to roll out instead of having to try to cut the shape at that point. Take our first one. I just wrap it sort of as tight as you can, get the air out. There you go. Those 2 go into the fridge again for about an hour. Next, we got to get our cherries ready. We need 650 grams of pitted cherries. So there's 2 ways you can do this. One is an extremely long, painful way. Painful mentally because it's a lot of work. You just take a knife, you just sort of split it around the circumference, twist off one side, and carefully pop that pit out. You can also, if it's a little tighter, this one's also a little juicy. You pop it, is quarter the next half because it can make it easier to get that pit out. That's how I did my pie yesterday, and it's a lot of work. And then I bought this thing on Amazon, and for, what was it, like $10 or something like that. You just plop your cherry in there, and with this cherry pitter, you just pop that pit right out. And this goes so much faster. So let's get our cherries pitted. Okay, let's just make sure we've got about 650 grams. Oh, so we're a little over. It's about just over 700. I'm actually going to leave it like that. I like a little bit of extra cherries in the pie. Our next step is we got to cut all these in half, which is a great way to also check to make sure there weren't any pits that got missed by the pitting gun. A little bit of a laborious project here, but needed. And again, just keep watching for pits to make sure none got missed, because you don't want anyone's tooth cracked while eating a cherry pie. Okay, and there we go. You can feel around too. Just make sure there's no pits in there. Okay, so we're going to get our approximate 2 tablespoons of lemon juice ready. So I just take a whole lemon, cut it in half. You can also add some lemon zest too if you really want to lift up the flavor. I typically do that like in a blueberry pie. I'm just going to follow along with my normal guidelines. No lemon zest, but about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I just set up a little bowl with a sieve, get the fork in there, and get all that juice out. This, not as much juice in this lemon as I want, so I'm just going to do the full lemon. And again, I love lemon, and I think that really lifts up the flavor. So if you want to go 3 or 4 tablespoons, it's fine. Again, I lean a little more intense flavors with almost everything I do. So there we go. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, let's get these cherries reducing. Okay, so in sort of a wider flat bottom, like a medium or large saucepan, over medium heat, we're going to add the cherries, lemon juice, and a half a cup of sugar. Okay, so that's the 700 grams of cherries, half a cup of sugar, and all of that lemon juice. Okay. So keep your eye on this. You're going to want, let's combine all the sugar and the lemon. And again, keep your eye on this because we've got to let that heat sort of force all the liquid in those cherries to reduce, because there's a lot of water in cherries. And we need it to reduce quite a bit because you don't want your pie, when you cut it, to fall apart. Okay. You can see all that water releasing. And that was literally just throwing cherries dry into a medium heat saucepan with sugar and some lemon juice, and this is what happens. Like, there's no extra water added in. As you can see, that water very quickly starts releasing from the cherries. You're going to keep reducing that down another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so while all that liquid is coming out of the cherries, we're going to help it along with a little bit of cornstarch and another half cup of granulated sugar. So 50 grams of cornstarch, half a cup of granulated sugar. We're going to grab our whisk and whisk that together. Okay, that's reduced quite a bit. And now we just want to help it along with the cornstarch and sugar. It's going to set up pretty quick. It'll look a little, murky at first, but that kind of goes away. Okay, and one last little thing. We're going to add in about a 2 tablespoon knob of butter. Let that all melt in. Heat's a little high there. Okay, our pie filling has cooled, so we got that set aside. We have a 9.5-inch pie plate, which we're going to roll the dough out to, and we've got our 2 wrapped dough pieces of dough that have been in the fridge for a couple of hours. I had to take a little detour, so I'm back ready to roll this out. So let's just flour our work surface. Flour is your friend. It is going to keep this dough from sticking. So okay, so with dough, and look, I'm no expert at dough. There's a lot of other people out there better than me. So what you want to do is make sure you keep rolling this into a big circle. So for me, it's a lot of pivots. And flipping it over. Right there, I'm already concerned that that's splitting. So we'll keep our eye on it. So when you get little spots like that, they're splitting, which happens. Probably could have been a little more moisture, I guess, in the dough. You just have to work it back in. Man, it's hot today. This isn't perfect, but it's going to do. Maybe a little bit too big, but we want to use this to measure. You want extra dough around the edge of this because it does have to sink in. Again, this is tricky to do on such a hot day, but we're about where we want to be. Pull it like that. Okay. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of a problem here with my pie crust. First of all, you want to make sure you're lifting it up on sides like this, letting it fall down into the middle. I had a little too thin there, and it's pretty challenging in this humidity and heat. I think we're going to save it. Okay. There we go. I'm just going to let this set up in the fridge a little bit. Okay. I just cooled that back off in the fridge. We've got our pie filling now. We're just going to fill this up. Make sure you get it all. Okay, so just make sure that's all spread evenly around. And then we're going to make the lattice work. This piece of dough, I typically try to roll it out to a little bit more of a rectangle so I get some nice even strips. You'll see what I mean in a second. We're getting close. Okay. We are good. This is where we want to be. Just to keep things pretty, I'm just going to cut off this one end. You want to make them about 1.5 inches wide. And they don't have to be perfect. Those strips were getting pretty sticky, so I carefully picked them up, put them on some parchment paper, and placed them in the freezer just to get them firmed up a bit before we started to do our work. Okay, let's get some lattice work done here. One challenge after another today. So we are just going to start with the middle, make sure it's a longer one. You want to save little shorter ones for the sides. Probably didn't space this out well enough. You'll notice these are a little stiffer. I like to just throw them into the freezer for a little bit before so I get them all placed. Okay, those will warm up wildly quickly. Okay, so I'll just wait till they warm up before I do the next step. Okay, these are nicely softened up. So what you want to do is take carefully back every other one. You lay this down like that. Then you take the opposite ones this time. And we just keep doing that. Don't worry if the cherries get on top of it. All delicious, all works out. Okay. Okay. Could have utilized our space a little better over here. Let's see if I can fix it a bit. Betcha I can just add one more up top. Go. Again, you can't really go wrong with flour, butter, and sugar here. It's not as pretty as you want it to be the first time. Don't worry, keep trying. It gets better. This one, there were some few disastrous moments in it, but we did a good job of saving it. All right, so now what we want to do is a little tricky. We want to lift up these edges, okay? We're going to do this while it's warm. I'm not even going to cut here. Tuck them under, okay? But just do that first. Don't worry about pinching the sides and making that nice sort of grandma, edging to it. What I call it, scalloped. Just get these folded under. It's not hanging over the back side of your pie pan. Especially on a day like today, this will not be pretty. Okay. Now what we want to do is do that sort of nice crimped edges. So I just like to just sort of squish everything together a bit more. And your fingers, the heat, warming it up, turning into one solid mass of dough. And then you can start to do your pinch work, which I just like to just pinch my fingers together like that. Now our oven is already preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And we have one last step before this pie goes in. We need to do an egg wash. Okay, we're just going to use one egg. And a little bit, 35% cream. Okay, that's it. We just want to make sure that we just get all of this dough. Don't worry about it if it gets down into the cracks. That's okay. I like to start with the flat part first and then work around the edges. And this just gives it that really, really nice golden color. Otherwise, you'll get these sort of white spots. So make sure you get every little inch. Okay, this is ready to go. We've got the oven preheated at 425. We're going to cook the pie for 20 minutes at 425, and then we're going to drop it down to 375 for about another 30 minutes. Okay, and there we have it. I'll be honest, I was a little worried there. The humidity and the heat was really messing with me and my dough. A little crusty on the edges. Honestly, I rushed the egg wash a little bit and I didn't take the time because the dough was pretty soft to get in there. And you can see if you don't do your egg wash properly, that's what happens. So this is what we want it to look like. And Mr. Rush Job over here made this on the edges. The dough was so soft in this heat that I just started to push it around. So I kind of abandoned doing these edges and you can see what happens. So this is a nice little experiment. It's still gonna taste fantastic. That is a good looking pie. Okay, this has cooled off quite a bit. Time to cut into it. Okay, let's give this thing a try. was exactly what we wanted. Recipe down below. Like and subscribe and all that. Thanks for watching.